good background. So,
Girl, it's all good.
okay. All right.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Awesome. So it was cool because like reading through your story, like there's so many little pieces that I was like, yep, like absolutely, totally. And it's interesting because I have been looking at psilocybin therapy for a while. And for it sounds like a lot of the same reasons that you have, which is the whole history of trauma. And I've done so much work personally and in therapy and in all of that, but I still have random memories that pop up and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I was carrying that. And and I still feel the heaviness from it. You know what I mean? Like I've definitely gotten lift over the years, but um I still feel like I have a ways to go. And so
Sure.
like that was when I read your story, I was like, yes, like, I mean, like I had the same, narcissistic parents, high achieving career because I kept thinking, if I keep going, I'm going to get to a place where I'm enough and I'll be
Right.
successful enough and I will be, when I read the thing with Louis Vuitton bags, I was like, yep, I've got I've got a closet of Tiffany boxes that like, I don't know what to do with because I don't want the stuff anymore, but I don't know what to do with them. Um,
Right.
and going through that process never brought me the peace or the happiness that I thought it would. And so like reading would you mind just sharing a little bit of what you shared with me? Because it was like, it resonated so deep.
Sure. So, I mean, I battled mental health my whole life. I mean, if I'm being honest and completely honest, I've always had depression, anxiety, never felt like I was enough, never felt pretty enough, but never felt secure enough. Didn't matter how, if I was a top 1% loan officer, I never wanted anybody to tell me that because, gosh, I'm not good enough for that.
Yeah.
That's just what I carried on the daily. And so when I came out and told people about my challenges with depression and that I would sit alone in the closet and cry for hours, people were like devastated. They were like, what? Who, you? You're happy all the time. And I'm like, well, those are the people you need to check on because those are the people that are really hiding the pain with that laughter and with whatever they're distracting themselves with. And I did a lot of distracting for a lot of years. I did distracting with people pleasing for, I'll be the chameleon. I'll be whatever you need me to be as long as you like me and accept me. And I found myself at 50, I'm an empty nester. My kids are growing up. I have a grandchild and what's next for me?
Yeah.
So I made it to top 1% and I'm bored.
Yep.
I'm unhappy. I have $1 million house. I have a great car. I have a great career. I have a great kids, and I have a wonderful grandchild, but I can't get out of the closet. What's wrong with me? And it just was a perpetual cycle for years. And I would drink, and then, you drink to feel better, and then you wake up and you feel 10 times worse, and the problems are even worse because maybe you texted somebody or you fired off an email that had been on your mind, and now you got to deal with that backlash. So, I was spiraling quickly, and my family wanted me to seek out Western medicine. They were, my husband at the time wanted me to go to therapy. I had been in therapy many times, and I had said to him, I'm not going to let somebody in my head and label me
Yeah.
because labels are what keep us down.
Yeah.
And
That's
he
an
didn't understand
that's an
what
interesting
part.
that's an interesting point because like one of the things that I'm realizing in doing these interviews is that every single one of us has these stories of the crap that we carry and the labels that we start to accumulate are so, on one hand, it's validating. On one hand, it's like, that's why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing. But on the other hand, it's also alienating because you
Right.
start to like live in that label. So that's
100%.
I love that.
100%.
Good point.
Yeah, I even, I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for a while. Not that I'm against it. It saved a lot of people. For me personally, from my experience, standing up in front of a room on the daily, telling people that I was an alcoholic didn't resonate with me. I'm not. I had trauma. I
Yeah.
was escaping that
Yeah.
with a tool that is socially acceptable, unfortunately.
That's a good.
So,
Yeah.
so I got on TikTok, and I was hearing about psilocybin and the wonders that it was doing with mental health. And yes, I was a drinker, but I raised my kids to be drugs are bad. Stay away from them.
Yep.
And so when mom, who was a drinker, now is going to psilocybin, they're like, "Oh God, what does this look like?" Oh crap. So there was a lot of backlash and a lot of judgment, and I still sit in that on the daily. I still have a child that will not speak to me, and I just have to send him love and know that it's not that he doesn't love me. It's he's living his life based on the standards that I have instilled in him. So I can't be angry with him.
Yeah.
He's setting a boundary for himself, and that's healthy. And I know one day it will heal, but it's taken a lot. And shedding what no longer serves me has just if I did this interview a year ago, it would be completely different. I arrived a year ago in Colombia absolutely broken.
Mm.
And a year ago I arrived in Colombia. I'd never traveled abroad before alone. Um
Oh,
and
wow. That's a lot.
it is a lot. And I had told my husband at the time, he said, "I don't even know who you are anymore. You're not the same. You don't think the same. You don't look the same. You don't dress the same. Nothing is the same." And I said, at first I was like, "Gosh, that's devastating to me that my husband would say that to me." And then I thought about it and I went, "Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you."
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be that people pleasing person anymore. I don't want to be. I want you to love me for who I am. And I'm still trying to figure that out. So you're
Yeah.
either going to be with me for the ride or you're not. So it's been a journey. And, Entheo Goddess has been um, my passion project that has just become my life, because helping people get from the darkness is big.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people sit in darkness.
I I very much agree with that. And I also know what a lonely leveling up is, because the people that resonate with you at this level have a really hard time. They either have to choose to grow with you or they just don't fit anymore as you level up. And it is a lonely process. It is an alienating process, but it's also critical for that growth, because you can't force people to grow with you as you grow.
Correct. And
And
and that's a tough lesson.
it is, it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. And it's something that once you come to peace with, it's freeing, but it'll always kind of break your heart that in order to be the best version of yourself, you have to lose some of the people that resonated with you at that other level.
Correct.
But good on
Correct.
you, but good on you for like making that change.
And there's been a lot of healing along the way. I had my daughter-in-law, in particular, had some challenges with her mother, was an addict her whole life. And so, my daughter-in-law played that role of caretaker. So when I fell into this, I had a mental breakdown. I was hospitalized and scared my family pretty severely. And my daughter-in-law, put a pretty hard, fast rule. She was like, "You can't be around your grandson. You're too volatile."
Wow.
And as I earned that, it was tough. It was tough to earn back that respect and earn back that trust from her. But we've made it through it, and we've healed. And she's learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and I think the most important thing, we've just learned to know that in spite of our differences in how we were raised or our beliefs, we can still love each other and live and be a mom and a grandma.
Well, and like I don't know if you realize what a huge thing it is that you owned that and said, you know what, in order to be part of of your lives, I'm going to elevate and I'm going to reach where it is that I need to be, because it, I went no contact with my mother, I think 8 years ago. And
Oh gosh.
my only request was, we work in therapy to make this better because this does not work. And
Right.
she told me at the time, that's too much work. I'm not interested. And in 8 years, when I went no contact, I honestly thought this will be a catalyst. This will be the thing that pushes her to do what you did
Right.
and grow. And instead, she chooses to stay. And I have to respect that. I have to respect that the only thing I can own is my growth. And so I don't know if you realize what a huge gift you gave your family and yourself. I mean, like, we're all on this path of repeating cycles. You do as well as you know how to do. I honestly don't believe, there may be some exceptions, but I believe we all are out here doing the best that we know how to do. And
Right.
when you learn better, you do better. And so for you to take that, that I look at things like your break as such a gift, because they tear you down to the base components of who you are. And
100%.
yeah, and you have to rebuild from there, and you get to choose. You get to choose, how am I going from here? Because at that point in time, all bets are off. There's no, you know, you are at such a raw and base place that you can choose to rebuild, but you'll never have it exactly the way it was. Or you can say, you
Correct.
know what, I'm rebuilding better from here. I'm learning from this and I'm rebuilding better. And so the courage and the guts that it took for you to rebuild better is amazing. Like honestly, you gave
Thank you.
you gave them such a gift. Like,
I
and
don't think they think it that way right now,
no,
but
no,
it
that's
will get
okay.
there.
That's okay. You know,
Yeah.
like, as an outsider, I would have given I would give anything for my mother, because it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. For them, what is comfortable is what they've always known you to be. So it makes sense that they're gonna be scared, and they're gonna be like, what is this nut job doing now? I know that I know that I on a routine basis, like, um I had an accident, I think 11 years ago. I need to actually research. Let's see, it was 2013. So yeah, 11 years ago, August 18th, it'll be 11 years ago. I was hit by a elderly driver on a closed road. I was at a peach festival on a closed road, and somehow she got on it and hit me. And it did a similar thing. I ended up with a severe concussion, post-concussive syndrome, major nerve damage. My equilibrium was messed up. I had to learn how to walk again.
Oh
And
my gosh.
and it did a similar thing, which was, it took me down to the base level. And it's lonely. I lost my two closest friends in the process, like people that I thought we would be friends forever. And they couldn't handle the fact that I was like, this old life doesn't serve me. I lost the relationship
Right.
with my mother. Um, but I look back and I'm like, the path has been hard. I won't say that the path hasn't been hard, but I'm so grateful for it. And it's clear that you have come through that process, and it has made you a much more, just reading through the emails that you sent, like, it has made you so much more real and so much more honest of a version of yourself. And that takes so much courage. So
Thank you.
you're
That
welcome.
makes me cry. Sorry. Uh, well, and in adding on, today I am with my first love. Um,
That's awesome.
and there's even more to that. I mean, when you're molested as a young girl, when it comes to love or it comes to relationships, that's a whole nother ball game. And if I could talk about that a little bit, I ended up forming a person that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And the break, as you say, we have to be grateful for our breaks, because that break did show me that this isn't who I am.
Yeah.
I'm living my life for all these other people, and they love me, and they want me to be around. It's not that. It's just
It's
I don't even know who I am. You know, who am I, and what do I truly believe? And so yeah, it's been a ride. It has been a ride. And getting back with my first love and having him say to me, "How can you be 55 years old and that same giggly girl that I met and fell in love with at 14?"
Mm.
Now that those are words that that's a victory, because when you're 55 and your life had fallen apart and you're broke and you're trying to put everything back together, your biggest fear is, gosh, nobody's gonna like me anymore. um, but Mother Aya, which ayahuasca, I've sat with ayahuasca several times. When I sat with ayahuasca my very first time, the shaman asked, "What do you want to receive from this plant medicine?" My response, which I had no plant medicine history really, I had dabbled a tiny bit in mushrooms, but I really didn't know anything. And I looked him square in the face and I said, "I want to be free."
Mm.
And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know. I had no idea. But moving through this journey, I can tell you that it was because I had placed myself in a personal prison. Everything that was going on around me and everything that was going on was all in my head, because I can achieve greatness. I am great. I am worthy. I am beautiful. So cleaning up the minutia in my brain was crucial. And psychedelics, I'll tell you, there's no hiding. There's no hiding. You can't be anything but 100% authentic. And if you choose not to be, they'll kick your ass and put you back in line.
Huh. Like, so explain more of that, because I like all I have read is that it's amazing. I don't really have any real sense of what that means. What does that mean?
Well, for me personally, and I can only speak from my own personal experience. So, for me personally, I would walk around on the daily in a cloud of always like in a cloudy day. That's the best way I can describe it. You're just kind of always in a little bit of darkness, and you just always have bad dialogue going on in the back of your mind. So when I took psychedelics for the first time, and it's not what people think. It's not like you take them and all of a sudden pink elephants show up and your face is melting. That's not what we're doing. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to raise your serotonin levels to a level that you have a bliss
Mm.
throughout the day.
Mm.
So it's like having a cocktail without the crash. You don't have the sugar crash, you don't have the sugar high, the sugar low, none of that. So it's going to help you regulate everything in your body. And in doing that, if you take too much, well, it's going to take you on quite a journey. You will be sat down and have a conversation with God. Guaranteed. And if I could describe that, I just I don't even know if I can describe it.
Huh.
Um I don't know.
Okay. I mean, because that's, I won't lie, I'm apprehensive. I'm like, and part of it is I'm on a lot of other medications, long term from my accident, but like I'm wildly curious because
Sure.
I do look at this world as it's all an adventure, and I'm curious.
Sure. Well, so the one thing to know about psychedelics is that there's nothing to be fearful of. Again, if you get into something and you're being shown something, people as human beings go, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is something awful. It's never going to end. But if you can learn to surrender and say, I'm being shown something
Yeah.
and I just need to shut up and set my ego aside, that's when the beauty happens, because we want to control.
Yeah. No.
As human beings, we want to control everything.
Yeah.
And we are so powerful, but we have all this minutia that we're energies and garbage and programming. And psychedelics can just help shed that a little bit at a time. You don't have to take a heroic dose or go out in the woods, and get lost for 6 hours and have the sheriff come find you. Um, it's fun. I mean, it's fun, but other people don't think it's fun. But you don't have to do that to heal. You can you can take just a tiny bit on the daily, and just journal and have your healing journey on your terms.
Like, and what you said about letting go of control is that was for me such a gift to real, because I mean, like, that's a great approach to life in general. Growing up in my growing up life was chaotic. We moved frequently. People will say that pot isn't addictive. My father was a pot addict, and I know addiction when I see it. And I now realize he hotboxed us everywhere we went, because no
Oh
matter
Lord.
he smoked it constantly. So everywhere we drove, like that car was full of it. I always laugh about the fact that I remember being in college and walking into a party, and one of my roommates, we lived in a suite of one, was like, that's hot. And they could smell it. And I was like, that's weird, because for them it was like, oh my goodness, this is a coming of age. And for me, I'm like, oh, that's a nostalgic scent. That reminds me of my childhood. And
You're like, oh, you're cute.
oh. And it was one of those moments where, like, you mentioned earlier, like, when I unpeel the covers of my childhood, people are like, what? You're like, it's hard for people. It's hard for people.
It
People
is.
look at me and they think they understand the box I'm in. And I'm like, oh no, honey. No, it's, my parents did lots of questionable choices. And growing up in that chaos, I craved consistency and order. And so I created this very rigid world. When I was in the corporate world, I was the only woman in a team full of men, and that had its challenges, but we had a lot of fun together.
Right.
And what they learned is that they could drive me crazy. They would always, as the only woman, they constantly came by and visited. And as they would come by and visit, they would slightly shift things, and it would drive me nuts, because, like, I was so focused on like, my stapler goes here and my tape is here and my mouse is here. And every single day things would shift. And so it wasn't until my accident, like, you would have thought that having kids would have done to me, but it didn't. Like, my daughter as an infant was on a very structured, she ate at these times, she went to bed at this time, she woke up at this time, and she was a happy infant because she never got super hungry, never got like, like she was a very easy infant because I was like on that schedule. And then I had
Right.
an accident and it melted everything and my brain's ability to maintain those rigid frames. And so one of the first things I had to learn how to do was to just let go. And it was so hard. But it is such a gift once you learn how to do it, because I have always been amazing in a crisis because of growing up in constant crisis.
Right.
But now I'm even better because I'm like, you know what, we're gonna figure it out. It's not a big deal. Like, let's just I get the world's burning down. It's real important for rebirth or something. I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out.
And that's me. I'm always like, it's all good. Just, sit down, get on your knees. We'll just meditate. It's all going to work out. And people want to punch me on the daily because I used to be the person going, no, we got to fix shit.
Yes. And then now I'm like, I say this and I know it sounds like hyperbole, but I know in my heart of hearts, I am 1,000,000 feet tall and bulletproof. I know this. And I think it's an incredibly freeing place to be from. Like when you've been taken down to nothing and rebuilt yourself, you know every single brick that you've put into place to get to where you are. And you also
100%.
know that none of those bricks really matter. You know, if somebody takes out the bottom 3 bricks and everything collapses, I'll just rebuild that thing because you know what? I got this.
I didn't like the way it was put together the first time.
I wanted a new window regardless. So you know what? I'm going to put a new window in. Neat. You just saved me the time of having to deconstruct it. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it has been challenging, but I am so grateful for every break, everything that I've had. I mean, I even had an incident this last year. I was in Italy at a healing retreat and I decided to stay for an extra 10 days.
I love Italy.
And oh, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And it was an impromptu trip. I was traveling with friends and they invited me to come along to Sardinia. So I canceled my trip to Greece. I had a trip to Greece planned all by myself. I was going to stay there a whole week. And then anyway, so we scheduled our flights, and every single one of us scheduled flights. There were 3 airports in Sardinia. So we all scheduled our flights and every one of us flew into a different airport. So this is an example of the universe challenging me, okay? So I get into the airport at Sardinia. I have no bags. It's midnight. I have no ride. And the person I'm traveling with is like, Pam, it's not a big deal. Just walk to your Airbnb. I'm like, I get what? You want me to do what? What? So I'm a little distraught. Okay. I'm walking around the airport, no bags, no nothing. There's no people. And the people that are there don't speak English. And they really don't care that I don't have my bags.
No,
Honestly, they just don't. I
no.
mean, so I finally have a conversation with somebody and she says, well, you're just going to have to go to your hotel and we'll figure it out. Okay. So I figure it out. I make it to my hotel. And the next morning I'm like, I have to drive from the airport to the Airbnb where we were at, which is like 2 hours.
Oh.
I have no phone charger. I have no clothes. My phone's about ready to die. So I'm like, I could sit down in the airport and cry, but probably just need to rent my car and get on my way. So I did. And I map, how I'm going to get there while I have Wi-Fi and get in the car. A 2-hour trip turns into a 4-hour trip. My phone now is like in the red because, of course, I have to listen to music while I'm driving because I need it. And I'm hysterical. I pull over to the side of the road. I literally started screaming, crying, like, God, I know you're here and I know you're testing me, but I've had enough. Okay. I literally, like, I've had enough. I need some reprieve. And I had been driving these lonely Italian roads. And all of a sudden, I just clicked. I put the car in gear, proceeded. I headed over this mountain. There was a convenience store. I got a phone charger. There was a little dollar store. I got some clothes, made it to my resort. And I was just, looking back on that moment in that time, it was a moment where I really had to release and trust.
Yes.
And I've had so many of those instances where I'm on the brink of just giving up.
Yep.
And I just had to surrender and say, look, universe, I need you.
So
I need you.
this brings to mind one of my favorite analogies to this entire point. And it's one that's helped me a ton over years, and it just kind of occurred to me one day. Have you ever used one of those old-fashioned water pumps?
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay. When you start with one of those, the first couple of pumps are really hard, and it's
Mhm.
like you don't hear anything, like nothing's going on, and you're like, okay, am I even doing this right? Because like there's no instructions, it's just a pump, and so you keep pumping, and without fail, your arm starts to get tired, and you're like, Am I even doing anything?" And you have to go on blind faith. You have to know that there's water there, and your arm starts to get tired, and your shoulder might get a little bit sore, and you're still doing it on blind faith. And inevitably, every single time I've used one of these, every single time, I've gotten to a point where I'm like, it's not working. There's either no
Right.
water, and you have two choices. You quit and you go thirsty, or you say, you know what? I'm gonna just see it through. I'm gonna keep going because one way or the other, something's gonna happen. And that point at which you continue to go is the point at which you start to hear the first gurgles.
Yes.
And then, like, suddenly it becomes really easy to do. And if you keep going, then the flood of water comes. And then, like, if you want the flood to continue, it's just an easy little pump every once in a while. But a lot of people, when they get to that point where their arm is sore and their shoulders tired, and they're like, it's not working. If you choose to quit, then you're not going to get water,
Right.
because it's you're building the momentum to get to that point. And the times that I've had the greatest successes are the times where everyone around me has gotten to that point and been like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore because it's not working. And I'm too stupid to quit. And so
Oh, I don't think it's stupidity, honey. I think it has everything to do with your tenacity.
depends on if you're on the receiving end or not. If
Well, like,
you're on the receiving end, it's stupid. If you've ever been on a project with me, you're like, she's an idiot. Like, and I mean, like, I can see the looks in people's faces where they're like, homegrown. And I've learned to be careful at what I put myself at, because if I put myself at something, I'm the crazy person in the empty field who's like, nope, there's water here. I'm gonna get
yep.
water.
Well, and there's another great analogy about that, and it's water the bamboo. When you plant bamboo, you're not going to see a result. You have to water the bamboo. You have to water the bamboo for almost 5 years before you see a result.
Really?
So, there's a lot to that. And we do that on the daily with our programming. We don't even know it.
Yeah.
We
That's
add to
so true.
our we add to our prison, we add to our limiting beliefs on the daily.
Yes.
And we operate from our subconscious.
Yeah.
So that's what we're really trying to do with psychedelics, is get to the subconscious and get to that reprogramming,
Mhm.
get people to understand that you hold the power to change your life. You hold the power,
Yes.
nobody else.
Yep.
Sitting in victimhood, and I sat in victimhood for a long time. So there's no judgment for people who are sitting in victimhood, because victimhood is safe. It's what protects us.
Yeah.
And I understand it, but gosh, there's a much more beautiful life out there,
And
and
it hurts. Like,
you can help so many people by telling your story. I've been wanting to tell my story for years, but scared because it's I have a lot of crazy crap that has gone on over the years, and to expose myself to that, to people that know me or have, truly know me and have maybe been on the outside while all this stuff was going on, that that's a little tough,
it's
but
it is absolutely terrifying. And
but at the same time, I believe, and I do know that, people need to hear it.
yes.
People need to hear that there are successful people that are struggling mentally, and god damn it, it needs to stop.
Well,
There's a
and
solution.
true. Yeah, like that's the whole reason why I started this podcast, is that I used to do the exact same thing. I used to hide. I carried so much shame over the abject poverty that I grew up in and the
Yeah.
abuse. And like, I was told the story, and I believed it, which is that like you're abused because you're a bad kid. You're
Right.
abused because you're this, that, and that. If you only were quieter and less obtrusive and took up less space and did these things, you'd be so much more lovable. And we wouldn't need to do these things because you wouldn't need to be abused. And
Right.
and so I hid so, and I was so worried about creating that veneer of success and perfection and my accident. I talked with several very successful people that were very open about their stories, and it was illuminating because I'm like, oh my God. Not only, and the more I started standing in my truth, the more I started talking with highly successful people it would resonate with, and they'd be like, oh, I have had these experiences as well. And what I realized is the greatest gift we can give as people is to show others you're not alone in this. Because every time I talk with someone, especially the super successful, but even people that feel like they're not where they want to be, we
Right.
all have these unifying experiences. And what alienates us as as a culture, because we're as a culture, America is in this they call it a connectivity drought, where people feel so alone. And it's because we're not reaching out and being honest about who we are. And so everyone
Yes.
that's struggling feels like they're the only one that has ever had that struggle. And that is a lonely place to be. And
Yes.
when we start being like, you know what, I was abused by my parents. I, grew up in a house of addiction. Um, my mother is a narcissist enabler. My father very much believed he was the second coming of Christ. And which is weird because we did not have religion at all in the household. But he would consistently say, when people realize how great I am, they're going to be just blown away. Like you know, I am the second coming of Christ, and people are just going to realize it eventually. And it was like, no, they're not, because you haven't done shit with your life. You
Denial is not just a river.
exactly. I mean, like, it was weird because he passed away a few years ago, and I was going through some of his belongings, and that was illuminating. But I came across his resume, and the only real accomplishment, there was a lot of hyperbole, but the only real accomplishment he had listed in there was that he had 2 children and he was married. And the irony was, he was a shitty father to me, and he spelled my name incorrectly. And I'm like, oh, it was like, really? So this is your big accomplishment in the world, and you don't
And
even
you
know
skirt
my
out.
child's name. Well done. But
Oh,
but what I have found is that I was sexually assaulted in in college. Like, when I started being open about my accident, it was amazing how these stories, instead of people judging me and ostracizing me for it, it has enabled people to connect with me and open up about their own challenges. And what I'm realizing is that, like, the gift, I know you and I were texting and you were like, I'm so nervous. And I said, you're going to help so many people by showing them that there's a different way. And it's,
I that's my goal. I mean, I really do want to help as many people as I can. You know, sorry, I'm getting choked up.
oh, God, this is awesome.
And I never spoke about my molestation until I was 50.
Yeah.
Um, I I had talked about it. I told my husbands, and I use that plurally because, I have a pretty tumultuous past, but that's behind me.
And it's part of the process.
It is. And I never spoke about it until I was 50. And I think because, if I spoke about it, that made it real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I kept it inside, then it was still, it was still mine.
Yes.
And and that's what I want to share with people. It's not yours. It isn't yours. Get it out, talk about it, and tell people how you felt. Tell people how you went. Tell people how you fell on your face, and you
Yeah.
know, and not so much that you fell on your face, but you put your big girl panties on, and the pretty ones, and then you got up and you put your crown on and you adjusted it. And today, that doesn't define you.
No, it's part of the process. It's part of the process. But considering it, the crazy thing is, every single successful woman that I've interviewed so far, and most of the men, have had some kind of sexual assault in their background.
Yeah,
And I think that we look at the numbers, but I think it is so much more prevalent, but we don't talk about it as a society. And there's so much
right.
shame that the recipients carry. And all that silence does is it empowers the ones who are committing it. And it perpetuates that cycle, because
100%.
because it is, I still carry shame over it. And
Hmm.
I went over my outfit in my mind. I was like, okay, so I was wearing a white V-neck men's t-shirt, loose, and a pair of shorts, and Adidas flip-flops. What about that? Maybe I should have had the V-neck on. Or, and I was hanging out with a group of friends from high school, and most of them went to go get more beer, and I stayed back to wait for the pizza guy, and one guy stayed with me. Oh, I should have known better. And there were 2 beers left. He gave me one, and I should have known better than to drink with someone that I had known from high school. Okay, so that right there, I should have known better. And when I woke up hours later, naked, I was and like covered in semen. You know, it was back before date rape drugs were really known about. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I had 2 beers that night. What was the dynamic that like enabled me to get so out of control that happened? And like, and so I owned that for a long time. I was like, I don't understand. Like, I wasn't flirting. I wasn't, what was it and all that thinking does is gives power and affirmation that we ever deserve what happens to us. And the reality is that, like, without absolute clear consent, nothing should ever go past the point of, if someone passes out for any reason.
Oh,
It,
yes, 100%.
and if they
But
can't,
but unfortunately, that's something that you've had to carry,
yes, yeah,
and you've chosen to carry that. And
yeah.
and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
No,
Please don't
no,
take it that way. But but as a society, that's what we're as women, we're told,
yes.
that's, well, if you would have done this or you would have done that. Bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute bullshit.
Yeah,
And I think there's not enough people that speak about that, because it's not, you do carry around a lot as a woman. And we are the givers of life. We are the creators, and to be attacked in that way is a lot for us.
it is. And it's hard to stand in your power, as a
It
woman.
is.
I was an executive, and as an executive woman, you hear all these weird messages about who you should be and what you should do and how you should dress. And, you know, I can remember being in a meeting and I'm wearing a full suit. I've got a string of pearls on. I am as asexual as I could possibly be. And the group of men started making pearl necklace jokes.
Sure.
And it was one of those things where, like, I've got as raunchy of a sense of humor as anybody. And so, like, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this is funny. And then I realized, I was like, okay, if I'm standing here in a professional environment where we've all been taught not to do these jokes, and I'm wearing a suit that is cut up to here and boxy and as unsexual as possible, and they are still finding a way to make this sexual, and like the conversation wasn't going that way. We weren't having, like we weren't drinking. There wasn't any kind of, it wasn't going down that path, but they intentionally took it down that path. And I realized it was a way to keep me in the box.
Yep.
And it was a way to make sure that I knew that in the hierarchy of power in that room, I was at the bottom.
Yep.
And on social media, I get all kinds of crap about the fact that like I don't shower a ton of skin, but I also am not real worried about covering up. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wear what's comfortable. And
Exactly.
whether I'm wearing a full on, sheet that covers every inch of me, or if I'm wearing absolutely nothing, it doesn't really matter. Like, all that matters is that I'm comfortable and I'm comfortable in my own space, and fuck the rest of it.
Exactly. And good for you for recognizing that, what that was, recognizing that that was insecure people wanting to attack you. The old me would have been, oh gosh, that would have
Yeah.
shrunk me down to nothing.
Yeah. Yes.
Today I look at that and go, keep it coming, because I'm triggering you, and that's what I came here to do. I came here to trigger each and every one of you to heal and get better. So keep going.
That is awesome. Because that's also a scary place to be in, and I never intended to grow a social media presence. I never intended to create a podcast. I never had this entire path has been completely organic, and I kind of have just released myself to the process and had fun with it. But it also,
Well, oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
I believe in divine intervention. I believe in divine timing.
Yes.
And so I believe that what you're doing is guided, whether you believe it or not. It's guided by the universe, and you're growing because you're helping people. It's just organically happening with the universe.
I absolutely believe that, because it has been, I always use the term working within the flow, which is when I'm doing something, be it a project, be it whatever it is in life, when I'm in the flow, things just kind of naturally move in the path I'm supposed to be on. Yeah, it's funny because this interview, I worked with 3 different people to schedule an interview on psilocybin, because it is something that I've gotten a lot of questions on, and I've had a lot of questions about.
Sure.
But my cousin, I absolutely believe that this conversation was meant to happen, because I love the fact that you have been so successful and have walked that path of trying to find the right pieces for you. And it wasn't until you stepped off the path and were like, you know what? I feel like I'm being pushed in this direction. And but not pushed in a way that feels good. And
Right.
once you stepped off that path and started embracing the flow, it led you to where you need to be. And I love that.
Yes. And I getting back to my old life, and here I was, successful, and I had all these great Louis Vuitton bags, right? So I had plenty of money in my account to start my business, and buy my mushrooms and get everything started. And I was insistent that my healing, my business would not affect our family account. And so I sold all my Louis Vuittons, and that's how I funded and started my company.
That's awesome.
And my husband at the time was pissed because he bought me all those Louis Vuittons, and that was his thing. It's like, I'm giving you this gift. And it's like, but that to me didn't resonate with me anymore. I don't feel good about having something that costs so much when I can take that money and help
Yep.
people. And I walked away from a lot materially. If you were to look at my life today versus 2 years ago, my life is completely different. I live completely differently, and I'm okay with that. I love the way that I live because I don't have to have all that pretentious crap or, worry about any of that stuff. I worry about people. Today I worry about people. I worry about people's mental health. I spend my days in chat rooms. I work with people in ayahuasca integration groups, helping people, sort their life out as it's coming apart and we're trying to put it back together. That's my passion today.
That's awesome.
And am I making 200 grand? No, but I will.
I mean,
And
that's the thing, is that the money will find you when you're in the
it
flow.
will. It would. I had a saying when I was a mortgage banker, and I would tell everybody on our team, when we go into a meeting and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you're having a killer month, and how are you doing it?" And I would tell people every single time when they would ask me, how do you do it? And I'd say, because you don't focus on your paycheck.
Yeah.
You focus on the pipeline. You nurture your pipeline, the pipeline will take care of you. Each call that you have is a human being. And so you listen to that human being and you nurture that with everything that you are, and everything else will come back to you tenfold. And it did. So if I can give you anybody advice, give out as much of yourself, give out more than you have to give, because it will come back. And when it does, it's beautiful.
I love that so much. I love that. And that's so true. The details don't, the details don't matter. We like
No,
to get so bogged down in the minutia, and it doesn't matter. When you focus on it's like driving. And this is another, I love analogies because they kind of take what you're experiencing and enable you to look at like places outside of yourself that you apply this. But when you're driving, if you focus on the side of the road, you're going to go off the road because that's where your gaze is focused.
right?
You focus right in front of you, you're going to hit stuff, because if you're so focused right here, you're not going to see the truck that hit his brakes in front of you. You have to keep your focus fully maintained on where you're going.
Hmm.
And the reality is the road constantly bends and shifts. But if you're focused on where you're going to naturally weather those bends and shifts, and you're not going to run off the road. Because if you're so
Correct.
focused on, I'm going from this point to this point, and you focus only on that, then you're gonna, the second you go around a turn or whatever, you're gonna go off. But if you're like, you know what, I know where I'm going, I'm going to that point, but I'm not gonna keep my focus there. I'm gonna focus just purely on the path ahead of me and how I'm getting there. That's how you get from point A to point B. That's how great journeys are accomplished. And
Correct.
the bug that splatters on the windshield, yep, clean it off, keep going. Like you're going to have those kinds of distractions. They're not catastrophic.
Correct.
As long as you're taking breath in, you can still continue on. And so I love that story that you just shared, because it's so true. It's all just part of the journey.
It is. It is. It is.